Hey guys, welcome back to IEP Unlocked, and our today's guest is Sui Pansioko, and trust me, you are going to love the conversation. So let's get started. Okay, so at first, can you give me a short introduction of yourself for our audience?
Sure. My name is Sue Panciocco. I am an ADHD parenting coach. I started when about 5 years ago because I have two kids that have autism and ADHD. And back in the 2000s, when I had my children, there was information about that, but there was no real information for the parent on how to parent your child, help your child. So there was a big gap because there was a ton of stuff we knew how to help an ADHD child, medication, IEPs, those kind of things, therapies, all of that was available. And my kids were all doing all that. And I would leave these sessions with therapists and whatnot. And I was just saying, like, okay, this is wonderful, but what do I do when I'm home with my child and they're having an epic meltdown or they're not listening or they're doing this? And a lot of the books were just kind of like, well, you can do this, you can do this, you can do that. And I searched for a long, long time to find some kind of a system that I could follow because I have ADHD myself. So I was having a hard time putting all this stuff together. And then eventually I just had to do it. And I just started a little bit at a time until I built something that worked for my family. And then people started asking me, like, wow, what's happening? Like, how do you do that? And I started helping friends and things. And then all of a sudden, people were like, you should write a book. You should. And I said, okay, um, writing a book takes a long time, but I'll just coach. So, I did along the way, took courses, that kind of stuff. But basically, a lot of it is just my experience of what I've done with my kids and what's worked. And I think a lot of my clients like the fact that I'm a mom and I am not all clinical. Like when you work with other therapists or coaches, it's very clinical. And so people would say to me, like, I'm so glad to meet somebody that this happened to their kid. This kid, your kid does this. I'm glad that you lose it at times and you're honest that it's a tough thing. So that's kind of my background and why I started doing this to basically help parents because if I had known, it took me 11 years. And so if I had known earlier, it's in the past now, but um, sometimes I wonder like, oh, if I had known earlier, could I have done more? So now I'm just like, I am where I am and I can help parents wherever they are and help them move forward.
So can you please tell me what is the biggest misconception about that parents have about IEP?
Oh, the IEP. The biggest, I think, misconception is that they don't have a part in it. That their part in it is not um, as equal as it is for the people because it's you and about seven other people sitting around a table. And if you don't know the process and the rules and the laws, then it is very intimidating. So I think that is the biggest thing is that parents are not informed enough about the process. You're given a sheet, like here's your rights, here's your laws, but you're given that in like 3 days, and then you have to figure it out and go in there. So it's very, very intimidating, and it's very emotional because you're fighting for your kid, and you have all these people that are fighting to, I don't want to say not help your kid, but it's in their best interest. So you walk in there and you're already at a no, and now you have to convince them why it's a yes. So I think that's the biggest, I don't know if it's a misconception, but biggest sticking point It's when you have your first kid and you're going into this and you just feel completely lost.
So if a parent is new to IEP process, then where do you think that they should start? Like what they should start learning first, or what's the process they should follow?
Um, so for me, I kind of went in blindly and thought that the school would be helping my kid and have their best interest. And the teachers do it for the most part, but school is a business now and it's a bureaucracy. And so a lot of times the people that can help, their hands are tied. So it's helpful to know the laws of your state. There are, if you look up, you have, I might have the link, but there is a website that you can go to, and it will tell you where all of where your state's advocate is. So that means that most people can't afford an advocate, but you can go on that site and look at it, and they have a ton of resources. And I know it's kind of overwhelming, but the first thing is really knowing your rights, what you can and can't ask for, reviewing some accommodations that other people have had. So there's tons of stuff out there about the most common accommodations. You know your kid best. So if your kid, my kids would panic if there was a time test. And so one of the common ones is to give them more time on a test. Those are the best things going in with a kind of like a plan. I know what my rights are for the most part, and I have a kind of idea of what I can ask for. The first part is usually the kids will get evaluated and they'll come and they'll tell you. And the biggest thing parents should know is ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions and ask and ask and ask until you absolutely understand because they use a lot of big words and jargon and things, and you need to get them to say it in a way that you can understand it and then hold them to, hey, if this is what you're saying my kid has, what are things that they need? And then question, question, question until you understand. So what are you saying? Like I was in an IEP meeting one time and the chairperson said, so do you think your kid needs extra help in math? And I said, absolutely. That math has been a problem since day one. And the teacher said, I think your kid believes they need the extra help, but they really don't. And that was like, you're telling me what you think, you're telling what my kid's reality should be. So that one, I was a veteran by then, so that didn't go over too well. But they will try to make it sound like, oh, well, you know, my kid is they're a pleasure in class. They do, you know. Um, so you have to just be aware. Um, and I think the biggest thing is knowing the laws, knowing some of your accommodations, knowing the timeline. You can look up the timeline, what states have for when you ask for an evaluation, when you get a meeting. Knowing that, uh, because a lot of parents don't, and so you'll be sitting there and not realize that they should have given you stuff 3 days ago, you know?
Okay, so can you tell me what is the one thing, I mean, one biggest thing that school don't want to give your child? Like, what is the biggest problem that parents face, and what is the accommodations they are lack of? Like, the school don't give the children's.
So honestly, everything is based on money and budget. So if you are, I was in a little rinky-dink town, and so there was not a big budget. Um, and it's very difficult sometimes to get the accommodations. And a lot of people get frustrated and not knowing, again, the law is that if they can't provide you with an accommodation your kid needs, they have to find it elsewhere. So again, I think it's just more going in there and knowing your kid. You know your kid. They only know your kid for a small window of time. So you go for everything. You go for the top tier, everything you can get, because it is easier to take things away than to put them in. So if you can get as much as you can in that IEP, even if, your kid maybe might not need it, or only need it for a short period of time, um, it's very difficult to get back in after you've said, "Oh, my kid doesn't need this," or "My kid um, no longer has to do this." So I would say big accommodations are anything that the school is going to have to spend big money on, but they will be very easy with, "Oh, we'll give the kid extra time. We'll give them breaks. We'll give them that kind of stuff." Those are easy to give that don't cost a lot of money. But if your kid needs a paraprofessional, they need somebody with them, they need an aide, um, that costs money. So I would say that the things that cost the most money are the hardest things to get. So having somebody that's going to help your kid. My kid was supposed to have a scribe. I think they had it for one day. And and then it's how do you want to fight that?
So how
So
do
that's
you
kind of
see the IEP world changing in next 5 or 10 years? Like how would be?
I don't know. I mean, it's always been at the state level, and the federal government was funding it. I'm pretty sure that they just did away with the Department of Education, which is a problem because at the federal level, that's where all your civil rights are. So if you aren't getting what you want, you had a place to go. I have no idea where that has ended up. But as far as states, that's the hardest thing is depending on the state. Like my kids when they were in school we were in Massachusetts, one of the top places for education. Lots, a very wealthy state. So there were there was more money coming into the state for that stuff. But then you go to places like Mississippi and Tennessee, they don't get the same amount of funding. So the big thing is money. And the kids that have the disabilities, the kids that are in poorer communities, um, it's always going to be who has the money. So if I was living where I was living in this little cow town, I only got this. But if I went 4 towns over to like Wellesley, which is rolling in cash, my kid would have got everything under the sun. So it really does boil down to budgeting and money and um, what district you're in, which is sad.
So do you think that any AI or digital product can help parents who has IEP kids?
Yes, AI is as good as what you ask it. So, um, for me, I like it as far as an ADHD person to be able to put in, "Hey, I have to do this and this and this. Can you help me prioritize it?" That kind of stuff. So I think it would be beneficial in for parents to be able to ask specific questions. Hey, this is what my kid's diagnosis is. This is what's been suggested when you get an evaluation. Usually you get suggestions on what you might want to ask from the school. Being able to put those in and saying, what does that look like as an accommodation? And how do I ask for it? And is it linked to a certain right so that I can go back to this law, this right, whatever, and say, well, according to the rights right here, my kid should be allowed to have this. So I think it would make understanding the IEP process and the rules and regulations a little easier as long as you do your cross-checking because things change so fast. So as long as it's only as good as the data that's already out there. So as long as you do your research and just don't solely rely, just don't rely on that completely, um, I think it's a very good tool to have. I don't think it will replace having, you know, uh, an advocate or somebody that can physically be in front of the board and talk to them, but it is a great way to get parents up to speed because there is so much information out there and it's so confusing. So if you could get it down, and not have to weed through all this stuff to learn it, that I think it would be a benefit.
So, what's something that you believe about IEPs that most people disagree with you?
I'm sorry, I missed you cut out a little bit.
I say
I missed
that
the question.
what's something that you believe about IEPs that most of the people disagree with?
I what I agree with IEPs that they're absolutely necessary. It gives people believe that it gives your kid a leg up over all the other students, and it's not. It's leveling the playing field. The kids with disabilities are coming in at a disadvantage. And so you are just making it so that they can be at the same level as their peers. So the same as, if your kid has bad eyesight and this kid doesn't, you help them get up to the same kind of eyesight so that they can see, right? So it's the same thing. If my kid has a difference in the way they learn, then they're they they're allowed free and public access to school, to education. And in order to make that necessary, in order to do that, you have to make it level as much as you can. So back when I was a kid, the teachers were able to diversify a little bit more. But IEPs are meant to, if my kid has dyslexia and they're in fifth grade biology, I'm not changing the curriculum. I'm just giving you the biology lesson in a way they can absorb it. Maybe they're at a third grade level reading. I just give them the assignment as a third grade level. They get the same information. They are doing the same curriculum. It's just modified so that they can understand it. And that's what IEPs are put in place for. Like, oh, this is giving the kid more. They should have exactly what everybody else is. It's not fair and has nothing to do with fairness. It has equal access to that curriculum.
Okay, so Aditya, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have some. So if a school districts in America rejects or cut IP service due to budget constraints, so can parents take any legal actions or how they will?
Absolutely. Yes. So there is a process that you can look up as far as conflict resolution, and it will tell you the steps that you have to take before you get to the legal part. Now, if you have an advocate, which usually is a lawyer at some point, then they're going to fight so that you never get to that point. But most people don't have the ability to get a lawyer. Um, so when it gets to that point, when you go up the escalation of um, conflict resolution, I know plenty of people who have uh, sued the schools and got what the kids needed. It's not very, I don't know if it's common. I don't think it's common. My friend that's a teacher says it's not very common. They usually are able to figure it out before they get to that point. But I have another friend who fought and got them, sued them and got their kid to be placed in a private school and the school paid for it. So um, there is a process and you always have the right to have a legal representation there.
So if a
So, f-
parent, oh yeah, finish.
so for you, what they should do firstly, if anything happens like that, any
So
parents.
where you're saying with AI, that is a good way to say they should give you paper that tells you the steps to take. But you could ask AI, this is the scenario that's happening. What are my next steps to take if I'm not happy with what they're presenting to me? And it should be able to tell you, like, if you've done this, okay, now you do this. If you've done this and that fails, go here. So it could help you with the process, um, and probably give you more in-depth information than the little sheet they give you, like the one-page sheet they give you about your rights.
So if a parent feel totally overwhelmed, so what's the first step they should take?
Um, so the first step, are you saying that the kid's been evaluated and you've got an IEP, you've got a meeting, is what should I do next? Is that, or
Uh,
the whole?
I mean the whole process, any kind of situations.
Okay, so if you feel your kid is struggling, you have the right to ask for the school to evaluate them. It has to be written, and you should send it to the teacher. You should send it to the principal. You can send it to the superintendent. I always sent mine to the principal, certified mail, so that I got something back signed that said so and so signed for this. It got to them. Um, because you don't want them saying, we never received that. So start with the evaluation. Um, that timeline I was talking about, the minute you send that, you should know that there's so many days that they have to get back to you about that. And then there's so many days they have to do the evaluation. There's so many days that they have to now give you, set up a time for you to go over that and discuss if an IEP is necessary. So that is the first thing, getting your kid evaluated.
This is just a clip from the podcast, and stay tuned for the full episode.